Hello everybody and welcome to Gears of War Judgment on the Xbox One.
Starring Baird, it would seem.
Yeah, that's the thing, Jova. We actually get to play as all four of these people because they all have their own segments. It will become more clear when we get into it.
Yeah, but Baird's the one front and center because he's the one we all remember the most.
Well, he's the only one of the two OG members that actually retains his personality.
So, folks, welcome to the prequel that we've all been asking for, except not really.
Not really, because instead of going back to the Pendulum Wars like a lot of people wanted, they decided to have a prequel that takes place like 2 years before, 3 years before Gears 1. I don't remember how many years it is before Gears 1.
But technically it takes place after Rom's Shadow.
It also reveals, Teo, that turns out Baird already knew Cole before Gears 1, even though he never mentions that.
Well, it gave me the idea that they've been at least in their own squad for a long time.
So, yeah, folks, enter Gears of War Judgment. So, needless to say, Epic Games were on top of the third-person shooting world with the release of Gears of War 3. So, the big question on everyone's mind was, what's next? Well, not really much planned here. See, the main guys in charge of Gears of War kind of had decided to hunker down and weren't exactly planning anything more. That's why we have what is more of a side project per se, a spin-off if you will, a prequel. This is Gears of War Judgment, brought by their B team.
Alright, opening.
In Poland, apparently.
And we start with in media res, because Jova loves it so much.
Now, I will give them credit, the cutscene productions are exactly what I would consider of a game made in the time and age of it.
No, I have no problem with the production values of this game. It's on par with the third one.
I'm just trying to get all the pros I can because, well, this game needs all it can. Hey,
it's Baird, but he's in chains.
What could have happened?
And there's the rest of his squad.
There's two new characters. We'll find out who they are exactly.
Just give me 10 minutes to go back there and make sure the bastard's dead. Move, Lieutenant Baird.
That's the judge. Believe it or not.
Okay.
So, I won't want to be in this court.
Basically, it's before Aji became, you know, the lovable grandpa judge that we love from Ace Attorney. He was a gear, and he was, as you can see... Yeah.
Honestly, that would explain quite a bit of his backstory and why he's so immortal. Considering what he's had to live through.
Yeah, he came from this world.
Also, I don't know if it's just me, but for some reason the Gears' armor looks a bit more high-tech than it will later in Gears 3. Maybe that's just the higher production values, but you know.
Yeah.
Oh.
Alright, so basically, Baird and his gang are gonna are going to be tried for something that they did.
So, folks, are you
have time for this?
So, folks, are you... Tio, there's always time for bureaucracy.
The locusts are literally killing people by the minute. That's one of the reasons why Marcus had to be busted out of prison. They needed every elephant they could.
Ah, but Tio, this is before Gears 1.
Yeah, this was
for fuck's sake.
Oh,
desperate too.
I love that he uses his gun as a gavel. So, are you a fan of Star Trek? You know that one episode that's basically a court trial?
Or the Klingon, yeah.
This is pretty much that.
Are we being charged with doing our job?
Well, highlighting. I'm
also,
sorry.
That horrible lip sync. My God.
Allow me to remind. I assure you, Teo, there's nothing wrong with my recording. This is how it is.
I can believe that.
Ah, yes. As I mentioned before, the transition from PS2 to PS3 or Xbox X or 360 was a messy one per se.
It is worth mentioning that technically there was a lower budget than the main free games.
And you're just dumping like this. Okay.
So, Gears of War Judgment makes some changes to the Gears of War gameplay formula that I'm not keen on. Now, in order to switch weapons, instead of having the D-pad like usual, I have to press triangle to, the Y button to switch weapons. why the fuck they thought they would change what's not broken and doesn't need change, I don't know. But obviously it took me a while to get used to it.
Also, get used to that narration from characters, because we'll be hearing that.
Well, I mean, they are giving testimony.
Yeah, they're delivering testimony, to be fair. It makes sense to have it.
I don't mind that. I mind the fact that we just get dumped into the gameplay years. Yeah, yes, I get it. We passed from, we need to pass from Baird being trialized to him recollecting the events. But usually the transition, in these cases, is smoother. Like after the black screen, you get like a minor intro cutscene of them arriving into the swim. Instead, no, boom, just dumped into a full gameplay.
Now, to the game's credit, like Pedro said, the budget here was quite reduced from the other Gears
games. And there was
games.
another team helping Epic Games in this case. People can fly.
I was about to get that, yeah. Because a lot of people from the main free games, including Cliff himself, left Epic Games, Microsoft got people who can fly a different studio to help Epic Games with this game.
You know, that'd be interesting if they actually got developers who actually had the ability to fly to develop a game.
Alright, so yeah, like you guys pointed out, the basic idea of the structure of this game is that the judge, or colonel, as his actual proper role, is asking them to defend themselves by providing testimony. The game uses this as an excuse to show you and have you play through what actually happened. So we'll basically what happened throughout while we play it.
So if you die here, what's going to happen when he's sorry, and that when he's giving his testimony, and then I was shot in the head and killed. Oh wait, sorry, that didn't happen.
This is not Prince of Persia, so it's probably not what's gonna happen.
Pedro, why don't you tell him?
If you die, it's the usual back to the checkpoint thing. However, if you try to deviate from the path, the game will actually go, nah, I'm just joshing you. I actually went this way.
and then he keep trying to go the other way.
Again, our cities have been falling one by one.
So that's actually one good point. I will give it that. But yeah, that's the thing too. Like this game has also less pre-rendered cutscenes, so that might also have to do with it.
It is very much a budget title in a lot of things. Like, I will still give them credit for keeping the production values
Epic Games wanted to quick, because remember too, unlike the other free games, this game only had 2 years of development rather than 3. So it's pretty clear that Epic Games wanted to squeeze one more game before the next generation rolled in.
I guess, but couldn't they actually have a compromise and have some in-game cutscenes using the actual game engine instead of having to waste a pre-render one?
Like I said, Tio, the 7th generation of gaming when it came to this stuff was rough around the edges. Like, I'll admit, one thing that is great about the 8th generation of gaming is that, production values are a lot more solid and tight. But when it came to PS3 and Xbox 360 games, they weren't always maintained the best. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of examples where they are, but let's just say there was still a bout of either the budget regarding animations would balloon because they didn't exactly know how the tech would work as well, or this or that. Like, let me put it like this. As someone who's used Unreal Engine 4, that makes, the work for this so much easier. But back then, they had to work with the much less useful Unreal Engine 3 at the time, which, do not get me wrong, was still a fine engine. But when you compare it to something like Unreal Engine 4, you can see why there would have been some difficulties here and there. And mind you, it's a combination of things. It's that, and also the fact that they didn't have the original team that made Gears of War.
Most of them. Some of them have remained, but yeah, the key ones, they left by this point. I don't think even Rod Ferguson was involved in this.
I will say this though, all things considered, they could have done a hell of a lot worse than what we actually got with this game. I will say this though, the most boggling thing was changing up the control scheme. Like, why? Yeah.
It's like this game still plays exactly like a Gears of War game, so I don't understand what's the point of changing the button mapping. Like, again, it's the same. Oh, hold on, I have to explain. Another new mechanic, declassify. Killer Squad claim to encounter unknown locust variants. Dark Wretches replace them. What this means is, basically, these are challenges that you can do to will make things a bit harder. However, you'll gain extra points. What do these points do? They allow you to unlock stuff in the multiplayer, and also, if you get enough of them, you'll be able to unlock an extra little mini campaign called Aftermath, which I will show.
I can imagine how this would alter Baird's story. And then I decided to take on 100 enemies with one hand tied behind my back.
I mean, it's Baird. It may be possible he's just inflating the story for his own ego.
Game actually does that too. Yes, if you accept the challenges, Baird will immediately change the script and start talk about. Actually, the wretches were not wretches; they were dark wretches. So
Mr. Baird, you've written down in your written testimony earlier that you kept running into walls a lot. May I ask why?
Well, you see, the reason for that was because I felt the need to challenge myself, but I only found these challenges etched in the walls.
Well, technically, you're supposed to be called. Dwett's supposed to be Baird. So go ahead.
Honestly, though,
answer yourself.
But to be honest, though, if you keep running into walls, clearly that indicates to this tribunal that you are not fit to lead an army, let alone be in one. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask for your resignation.
Do your best, Flat at the Shore, the guy who plays Baird, impression.
Well, I'll do the best I can, but I can't promise anything. Are you serious? Are you serious? I led this army through all sorts of crazy shit, and you're telling me to bug off? You're telling me to piss off because I ran into walls sometimes?
You might have noticed how Cole is with us. He might as well not even be here, considering he's just there and he doesn't say anything.
He's looking way younger than the flashback you pre-showed us. So.
It's just that I fail to realize the point of having Cole in this game if you're not gonna have a map like Cole. Again, it's like Theo says,
it's not even a matter of acting like Cole, it's like acting at all. He hasn't spoken anything, I think, so far.
Seriously.
He will only speak to time for his testimony, and even then, it's the same voice actor, Theo, but I swear to you, it's like he's on horse tranquilizers.
I guess he was just not feeling it that day.
Thanks, Lightning.
Yeah, Sophia is voiced by Ali Hillis, and yes, she gives Sophia the exact same voice she gives to Lightning.
Ali Hillis has not really been doing a lot of stuff lately.
Well, we noticed that in one of the previous parts of the Gears 3 Java. Basically, she's now doing some minor roles in some TV series. One of the last roles she was like in an episode of Family Guy, for example. So the thing is that gaming-wise, aside from going back to voice Lightning for crossover events involving Final Fantasy, she hasn't done that much.
So the biggest...
once again, Nintendo didn't even bother to recruit her for voicing game Palutena.
Alright,
didn't they just reuse her lines anyway?
No, but it's actually listed on IMDb and all other sites. They just call the sound alike.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's a pretty good sound alike, I'll give them that.
Weird. I mean, is that, I'm seriously not Ali Hillis, is that...
I already theorized it's because of all union thing that happened, with a lot of actors, voice actors wasted their roles.
His actual name is Colonel Loomis.
Then move on to the Museum of Military Glory. It's under attack.
Well,
Sir,
crap.
Whatever destroyed our convoy still
Museum of Military Glory. How redundant.
And by noted, I mean I'm going to ignore what you just said and tell you I kept moving, Private.
So like we've compiled, for as much problems as this game does have, I will admit that when it comes to the storytelling and narrative, that being Baird stuff, the game does actually take mind to what you will do, and that is a nice caveat.
Yeah, it's not. It's probably the best thing I like about this game, running-wise. Anyway, you might have noticed those stars in the top left corner. You're about to see what they do. Basically, when I reach the end of a section, that happens, and I have to press up on the D-pad of all buttons to end the section, and there you go. So there you go. With each of those stars, is basically there you go.
Is the courtroom stuff gonna be? Sorry, is the tribunal stuff gonna be like in like in Persona 5, where Joker just tells the interrogator literally everything that he did up to that point. Like, he went to bed, he cleaned his room, he walked to school, he fucked his sister. Oh, wait,
It's
sorry,
actually used in a lot of it's actually used common in a lot of narratives with.
You see with Katsura Hashino ripped this off.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, worst game ever.
Of course, they have a wine cellar.
Okay, for
Yeah,
the
that's
line. Sorry, go on.
That's one of the funniest things, though, to imagine, you know, when you're doing the interrogation in that game, and then he said, "Oh, by the way, I fucked your sister." But anyway, moving on. You did what?
So yeah,
Okay.
I got stars out of that first section. When you get here's the introduction to the UIR sniper rifle. So basically,
It's a comrade.
What kind of line was that? It wasn't a gun. It was a comrade. Well, he was. Of course, it was the comrade. The gun's what he carries.
Dweps, meet Tom Bissell. Tom Bissell, meet.
Well, to
Dweps.
be fair, Tom Bissell wasn't the only writer for this game.
He was the lead one at least. I remember he was credited as the screenwriter.
That and this writing style is sort of reminiscent of what we'll get in Gears 4 and 5. Just imagine something 10 times worse for 4.
I know.
Well, one thing I've always believed when it comes to with writing credits, it's hard to properly tell who did what in the writing department. But with more than one person being there, you'd think one would tell the other or advise the other, no, don't do that, that's silly. So you think part of the blame would be on the other guy as well for not advising something better.
Okay.
Well,
To be fair, that can be an interesting case. Like, when it comes to who's the main writer, okay, imagine this. Imagine you are writing something alongside Mark Twain. The Mark Twain here. It's kind of like if you were on the same basketball team as Michael Jordan and tried advising him to play. Like, sure you can, but it's a very, very, very intimidating thing.
Let's see, everything here right now. Okay, so this game had two writers, Tom Bissell and Rob Alton.
Yeah, I read about it. Yeah.
I can, however, tell you that Rob Alton does not return for Gears of War.
Would you say that the writing here is reminiscent enough of Gears 4 and 5 to make the connection?
Well, no, it's still, like we discussed, it's still better than 4 and 5. However, Tom Bissell is the only credited writer in 4 and 5.
Okay. What I mean is, like, well, does the writing here feel like it could evolve, or in some cases, devolve into what we get in Gears 4 and 5?
There is specifically, well, okay, if I'm going to give Tom credit, Cole is much better written in 4 and 5, so I will give him that.
Yay, he improved in that area.
It's like when people complained about Pontac and Graf and Sonic, and yet they like the way they write Eggman.
Well, okay. Maybe Rob Alton is the responsible for draining Cole of his personality. So I guess I'll give him credit there. Still,
I guess.
go on. It doesn't change the fact that Epic Games thought it was a good idea to deprive Cole of his personality, but whatever.
This is sadly what happens when
Let me
original
check what
creators
Rob
sort of
Alton
lose their...
did.
This is sadly what tends to happen when original creators of a series tend to either just walk off the project or lose their power over it. The big bad studio tends to just see a money bag before them, and not necessarily the work that was put into
Not
getting
so
that
much.
money in the first place.
Also,
Go ahead, Theo.
Also, I checked, and for the life of me, I can't find a proper timeline placement for these events. It simply states in the earlier stages of the invasion. So, if I had to guess, between Emergency Day and 5 AE, but not too much after that. But there isn't a specific date. And I also got a bit of a spoiler involving Aftermath that I will not say here. So I can definitely say that, at least from what I could see, the game doesn't provide a precise date, with just early stages of the invasions.
Yeah, basically it's sometime before Gears 1. Not that it's that important anyway.
True, but I found it odd because every other event of Gears franchise has been meticulously catalogued to have a proper placement in the timeline. This seems to be the oddity.
So this game released in 2013, and for consensus sakes, in terms of reviews of this game overall, critics generally seem to like the multiplayer, the visuals, and some of the action. But criticisms revolve around the single player's narrative and the length, as well as the game's failure to innovate. Well, I mean, is there really much room for innovation in the series at this point?
Well,
Like
they
you said,
completely changed the controls up if you count that as innovation.
Like I said, I do believe that some kind of upgrade system would have benefited the things.
So, silly tale. Clearly, open world environments is what Gears needs.
Definitely.
I mean, okay. In some cases, that could have worked, but it was made in the mentality that making something open world will automatically make it better, without realizing that they would have to
for a
adjust
spin-off, I
things.
can understand maybe that in a sense. If you created the ideal situation, you and your COD team are trapped in an isolated big area, but still isolated, and you have to free. You have the cliched open world, kind of missions that you have to do. Free an encampment from the locust, sabotage a convoy, repair the radio towers. I know that everybody has memed to death the Ubisoft towers, but as much as people seem to hate them, I do believe they actually do their job they're supposed to do in mapping new things out. So the idea of an open world Gears game is realizable, but I will say only for a proper spin-off and with the right setting, not for your next mainline entry. If there's anything that should be kept for mainline entries, is the consistency.
Not only that, for as much as people do sing the praises of open world games, it needs to be realized that sometimes open world games can be considered the easy way out, because they can easily just be a big, open, empty sandbox, and there's technically your open world, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be good, well, varied, or whatnot. Again, bringing up Ubisoft, that was kind of a criticism Ubisoft was getting at the point where a lot of their open world games were just essentially glorified sandboxes.
Like Duets was saying, yeah, that's actually very accurate to this, because not only is the narrative flawed, because this game only had 2 years of development, it's the shortest of all the main Gears games.
Maybe if they had marketed this as a spin-off and sold it at a reduced price, this could be more reasonable, but nope.
How Activision do that of all companies?
I mean, just
when they
earlier, those stars, like I said, are your points that will unlock stuff, including the Aftermath mini campaign.
For example, round here, a big AAA game at most costs like $52.99, but Activision priced all their Crash/Spyro games they've been releasing, the remakesters or whatever, at just like £35 at most. That's typical AA price around here.
Gotta love the name of this location, the Museum of Military Glory.
Yeah, I noticed that before. Also, Dweebs, it's arguable because Activision still releases the stuff like the mainline Call of Duty games at full front price.
Well, those are like big budget AAA games. I mean, I'm not saying Crash and Spyro aren't big budget. They probably just get a bit less of one that Call of Duty gets.
I still think right now they still have to be considered AA, even in their development. Remember that for the Insane Trilogy, Activision had no faith in the project, and they actually got surprised when it sold a lot, and that one of the developers actually, crunched himself just to prove that a Switch port was possible. And then there's the fact that they gave less time and not exactly that much of a budget to push for Bob or the Spyro one.
That game's still smarter from that.
They did just debate because Twitter didn't really make the third one. That was Sanzaru.
Well, that still proves my point, is the fact that Jesus Christ, the fact that there's the difference in how the games are sold is still reflecting on how the trust that the company has towards the game.
Go back to what? To what we were talking about, the open world environments in Gears 5. That's the thing, though. Like I wouldn't even mind too much if they decide to really take Gears into a drastic change, if they committed to it, because the open world and aspects of Gears 5 feel so tacked on.
My point exactly. It's like, just because you make something open world doesn't mean it's automatically going to be good. Like
that being said, you also have to be very careful about how you do it, because you risk alienating. And you also have the same. Well, there's always a risk of alienating, regardless of what you do. To be fair, so that's just a fool's cause. Try to not alienate anyone.
I'll just put it like this: if you're gonna risk alienating a crowd, make sure you do as well as you can do for this. And like, you know,
not just that. If you really have to choose who you want to alienate the people who you know will probably not buy the game, aka all the newcomers you actually are betting on.
I know, right?
There can be a rare exception in the case of God of War 4, where the reason God of War 4 had such a drastic change in gameplay is because after 6 games of the Olympus saga, the original formula was starting to get tired, and the series really needed a shake-up.
And even still, with God of War 4, you could argue that, you know, the classic fans would still be interested in it for the overall price.
I still argue it only changes slightly the interface, but you're doing exactly the same thing.
Well,
that,
let's face it.
God
of War before 4 never had like big exploration and side quests to do. So it's not. I would argue there was.
I'm talking. Well, Pedro, if you're talking about gameplay, I'm talking about actually killing stuff, not proceeding from point A to point B.
Yeah, like.
A lot of people were alienated by the fact that they wanted the games to still continue to being linear hack and slashes. But whatever. That's
I mean, it's just the way you proceed from point A to point B. The core gameplay is technically changed the same, just from a different perspective. I really don't see the point of these people.
Oh, no,
whatever.
I agree. I kind of agree.
Jesus, that locust is fast.
Yes, it is.
But to make my point, it's more so the fact. It also has to do with the fact that the ending of God of War 3 dictated that if we were going to continue moving things forward, something different had to be done, because it wouldn't make any sense to go back to the previous status quo. It just doesn't make any sense to do that. So obviously, it was one of those cases where the drastic change in tone made sense, because it was a very specific situation that called for it. Gears of War didn't really have that. Gears of War could have remained exactly as it was if the developers in charge actually managed to create good characters and managed to create some really good new creatures for us to fight, instead of just reusing the locust. Go ahead.
I mean, doesn't the transition between 3 and 4 involves both a time skip and a period of peace because the locust and lambent are eliminated? Doesn't that, qualifies for a big change?
Yeah, sure. I said I never said it. I never said it couldn't be done. I'm just saying, like, it didn't necessarily need to be done. At least not yet, because I feel like you could still draw some more out of the classic Gears formula, personally. But again, it depends on who you ask, of course.
Then there's also the caveat that the formula change just was not really good. Didn't really sit right with anyone. Like, for the people who were classic Gears fans, they didn't like it. For the people who were new to the franchise, they didn't like it because, like I said before, it was kind of just bland and tacked on open world gameplay. Like, Like, sure, you have stuff to do, but it's bare minimum. Like, you know how Final Fantasy 13-2 technically has hubs? Think something like that.
I thought you were gonna say OG 14 or something, because that kind of had the same problem as well.
No, it works completely differently. But
open world, but there was barely anything to do in it.
I mean, an MMO is as an open world structure by default. It's different from saying a Final Fantasy game, mainline game, may have or not, a linear structure because of the condition of the franchise. They want to keep reinventing with each new title. But one thing that I'm surprised Microsoft has never done yet, that I just thought about it like a couple of days ago, is that considering the fact that with each new Gears game, they had to essentially repropose the multiplayer with the skins and everything. I'm surprised they never done something like the games as service, format, something like Destiny does, and have just the one game released with the core multiplayer and the single players as sort of mini expansions that gets released from time to time as DLC packages, Instead of basically having the idea of Gears 6, 7, and 8 compressed in just one game. I do wonder if the Coalition plans to do something like that for the Series X.
It really is one of those cases so much so like, yeah, well, I like to have said, the critics said that the game does not innovate, and yeah, technically it doesn't. This whole points with the challenges thing, yeah, it's nice, I guess, but it's all bells and whistles in the end. It doesn't really affect how you play the game in any meaningful way. So it's just like the bare minimum of putting something new in the game, really. Like, oh, you get to play this section except with harder enemies, or you have to beat this section with only this weapon. Like it's like the bare minimum of new things you can add to the formula, really. Like there's nothing substantial.
Apparently, from what I checked, People Can Fly is the studios that it's mostly known for being the creator of the Painkiller series, back in the day at least for PC. But they have collaborated with Epic Games for a while now. Apparently they did help with the original PC port of the first Gears. Then they did some minor help for both Gears 2 and 3, plus Bulletstorm, another game that Epic Games did, and back in the day was published by Electronic Arts, and more recently instead by fucking Gearbox, of all people. And more recently they have helped also with one of the expansion of Fortnite. And now instead they're doing their own next original full games, Outriders, published by Square Enix. So it's interesting to see that they do seem to have a story of cooperation with Epic Games before this one, but this seems to be the one where they co-developed the most with them.
Here's another one shot.
Yeah, okay, and then I ran over to the store on the far side and picked up some guy's old turret gun, 'cause it's not like he was going to use it anyway.
Fascinating. Oh,
hey, you wanted me to give you my full and unedited testimony, and that's what I'm giving you.
yes, proceed.
And then I met your sister, and I fucked her brains out.
Guilty.
Never seen so many grubs in one place before.
Hey, you told me to be honest.
And now you've given me all the reason to
Cole,
find
you had a
guilty.
line.
Yes,
Well,
he
'cause-
did.
Well, it's none of your business.
And he nailed that line too.
Also, I
Nailed
noticed a thing, not right now, but a bit before. There actually are some in-game cutscenes using the in-game renders, which just fine. Why couldn't they add one like that for the transition? That's why I asked. Weird.
I'm Onyx.
No, you're not, cadet. Stay here and defend this area. The east wing is getting hammered.
Rude.
Hey,
I mean, I know you're in a war.
actually, who
but
is Blondie, by the
still
way?
exists.
Pedro?
Yes, though.
Who's the other guy, Blondie?
That's Paddock. Paddock is the is from Goraznaya, which is Sarah's Russia.
Oh, it's the thing that I noticed from the comics, the fact that the Gorazny were basically standing for the Soviet Union.
Yeah, basically, and he even has a Russian accent.
So this prequel, I guess, gives us some lore of the previous war, Defensible Wars.
No, Teo. The only thing we'll establish is that Baird once knew this Goraznian guy called Paddock, who's gonna show up in Gears 5.
Oh,
For a bit.
okay, cool, I guess.
That's long-term storytelling.
You're not gonna get any new lore or any kind of proper thing. Not really. This is just Baird and his gang did something bad, and now they have to testify about it. That's the basic. That's basically the story too. Like,
All right.
like, you guys have been bad. Now confess. Now tell everybody what you did. That's Gears of War Judgment in a nutshell too.
All right. See you for the next part.
See ya.
See ya.